So, tofu puffs are probably one of the world's great soup toppings, as I'm sure I need to explain to basically none of you. They're a must, for me at least, in everything from malatang to snail rice noodle soup to Singaporean laksa. There's just nothing that absorbs flavor in quite the same way. Just a sponge for anything delicious you decide to put it in. Meanwhile, these are Yufu, that is, Cantonese fish tofu puffs. Technique wise, there's actually a couple similar things here going on: paste to protein, deep fried to puff, but critically, instead of soy milk, these work from a base of egg white and fish paste instead. The end result is similarly crispy on the outside and chewy on the inside, and similarly awesome in soups. But it's got that meaty kick of richness and umami that comes from, obviously, the fish itself. For me personally, if I ever see it on the menu, I order it. It's just one of my all-time favorite ingredients. That said, there are a few different variations on this whole idea of a fish tofu. So know that what we're teaching you today is a specific loading variety called 绉纱 Yufu, or wrinkled fish tofu puff. It's a style that's pretty famous in Guangdong. It's chewy, meaty, and our personal favorite of the bunch. And then to go with that, because we'll also have a bunch of leftover bones and everything, we'll also teach you how to use up those fish remnants to make a Cantonese restaurant-style milky fish soup to serve it in. That said, whether soup or sauce, definitely go nuts here. This is totally the type of thing that's a lot of fun to try to get creative with. So right, to get started with fish tofu, you'll predictably need fish. Now, in Guangdong, the specific fish that's used to make this stuff is called lingyu, which is kind of mud carp, super plentiful in Pearl River waters, and used to make an assortment of various fish-centric dishes. Now, we're definitely aware that you definitely won't have access to lingyu unless you happen to fish yourself. So instead, we'll be working off of a freshwater fish that is available all around the world, and that is tilapia. Of course, in Guangdong, lingyu is this famously umami fish, and tilapia, worldwide, famously less so. So to amp up that flavor, we are going to be cutting this with 8 grams worth, or about 10 dried scallops. We'll just soak those in hot boiled water, and then use that soaking liquid a bit later to help flavor our paste. Then, the leftover bones and head, we'll just set aside for when we make that soup a bit later on. And for the paste, we'll be using just that fillet, which today measured in at 325 grams in all. To really make sure that any leftover pin bones inside the fish are good and broken up, first thinly slice that into fine sheets. Of course, I do know that many of you will probably be working straight from supermarket fillets. Also, totally fine. Just soup-wise, you'll obviously be on your own. So once those are good and sliced, now just grab a pair of cleavers and get to work. Now, a second practical advantage of lingyu is that for whatever reason, that fish seems to go from fillet to paste in basically no time flat. But tilapia does take a bit of a sweat. What you'll be looking for is for everything to become a smooth, uniform paste. So this wouldn't quite be ready yet, but this would be. Getting there took about 15 minutes of grunt work on my end, so just toss on a podcast or something. And once you're at that point, grab and take out your now reconstituted scallops. Just mince those up as well. Combine and chop those all together for another minute or two. Then, something that I personally like doing to add a touch of spring is finishing this whole process with the back of a knife in the same sort of motion for another 2 minutes. Then, just transfer that over to the biggest mixing bowl you own, and then we can stir. So, to that, first just toss in 8 grams or about a half tablespoon of salt, and stir it to incorporate it all in. Then, to that, we'll be mixing in a slurry. This here was 100 grams of potato starch mixed with an equal amount of that dried scallop soaking liquid from before. Add in the slurry bit by bit, stirring the paste in one direction only. And once it's good and incorporated, also toss in another 50 ml of that scallop soaking liquid, also bit by bit. Stir, just like before. And to that, we also tossed in another totally optional 5 grams of fish sauce. Again, just compensating the tilapia. And then finally, we can go in with 165 grams or about 4 large egg whites. And again, This is all bit by bit, and again, really, don't skimp on the stirring. It's an absolutely critical step to develop a good final texture to your final product. For reference, front to back, this process took about 15 minutes. Your shoulder should feel a little tired by the end of it all. So once you're there, just set that aside until you're ready to fry. Now, quick heads up that, in my opinion at least, deep frying fish tofu is probably one of the most outrageously fun things that you can do in the kitchen. So, my professional suggestion would be to clear the schedule, crack open a beer, toss on some good music, and enjoy the process. Right before frying, though, toss in 1 tablespoon of peanut oil and stir to really whip that in for another minute. Then get your wokful of oil up to 65 centigrade. And that's not a typo. That's warm oil, not hot. Then, to form these, this here is kind of like fishball shaping but on easy mode. You just squirt a bit through your perlicue into an oiled spoon. And a bit irregular here is absolutely no issue. Just slide it into your oil. Then just work through all of your paste, give your meat hands a solid wash, and settle in. So, at first, all we're looking for here is for the skin of the fish tofu to form, which does take a hot second. So just keep your flame hovering around medium-low, making sure that things don't get too hot. And after about 5 to 10 minutes, you should start to notice a couple pieces that are wanting to start to kind of pop up. So just gently separate those from your wok, while also gently breaking them apart. Then, for the fun bit, just grab some kind of spider or skimmer and begin to push and dip the fish tofu pieces back into the oil, while also periodically shuffling those about. This motion helps things cook evenly, but also helps our fish tofus puff and expand. The reason this puffing is desirable is that what it does is layer the interior of the fish tofu, so that we end up with a final product that's nice, dense, and chewy. For reference, we're keeping our flame at medium-low here. And again, this will take a touch of time, something on the order of 10 to 15 minutes to get to nice and golden brown. So then just transfer those over to a paper towel-lined plate. They'll quickly deflate and get all wrinkly, which is exactly what we're looking for. So then just use them, store them, and for our soup today, we'll be setting aside 10 and keeping the rest in the fridge for the week to come. So, for our soup then, to a hot wok, just toss in a generous tablespoon of lard or oil, and over a medium-high flame, toss in your leftover fish bones, belly, and head. Using a stick wok like this actually helps get your soup good and milky, so once there's a touch of fond forming, give that all a stir and add in 3 cloves of crushed garlic. Quick 15-second fry, then toss in 3/4 of a liter of hot boiled water. Cover and let it bubble away for 30 minutes. And after that time, just strain, and if you're finding yourself a little on the low side, something that I like doing is topping it all off with a bit of that scallop soaking liquid from before. Then just move that over to a small pot and get that all up to a quick boil. Then, besides the obvious fish tofu, for today's soup, we decided to include 5 grams worth of dried muar woodier mushroom, reconstituted in cold water for an hour or so, and chopped into about 1 centimeter sections. About 2 inches of carrot, sliced on a bias into 1/2 centimeter slices, together with a half a loofah gourd, peeled, cut into chunks. And if you can't find loofah, chayote would also be a pitch-perfect sub. So then just toss in the muar, cook it for about a minute, then the carrot slices, cook for another minute, then the loofah gourd, cook for another minute, and go in with the fish tofu. At this point, season, which I'll just list here at the top of the screen, boil for a final 30 seconds or so, and out. And with that, you've got yourself some shantung yufu, optionally garnish with a touch of mild chili if you feel like it, and enjoy what's one of the most interesting Cantonese dishes out there, in my opinion at least.
So growing up in Zhaoqing, we had some pretty awesome fish tofu. And when we were living in Shunde, Chris loves to order fish tofu at restaurants all the time. But for me personally, it's often disappointed because restaurants tend to add a lot of egg white or starch to cut costs. So now let's just see if Chris's fish tofu is up to my standard. So right, these ones have the proper chewiness and texture to it, and it's pretty good. And of course, I ate a bunch during testing already. And making fish tofu at home is a little bit intense, but totally worth it. So I hope you can give it a try. So right, check out the recipe in the description box. A big thank you for everyone that's supporting us on Patreon, and of course, subscribe for more Chinese cooking videos.